Forget it, Mr. High and Mighty Master Control!
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, we grab a copy off that shelf, we pop it in our VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Ram!
And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. Ram indeed, Mike.
Yes, sir.
I can't wait to talk about Ram. You know, so one of the things that, kept us going to movies for like the last 100 years or so is that they always provide us with like a sense of wonder. Talented visual artists have been putting these things on the silver screen that mankind literally has never seen before. Whether it be, like King Kong on top of the Empire State Building, or Moses parting the Red Sea in the Ten Commandments, Luke's X-Wing flying down the Death Star trench at the end of Star Wars. I mean, that was amazing. Or even, bringing dinosaurs back to life in Jurassic Park. Hollywood's been able to put raising the bar on visual effects just to keep audiences just enamored and just, breathtakingly admiring all this all the time. So we thought we'd take this show, kind of focus on one of those movies we thought that did just that, thrilled moviegoers with, amazing visuals and pushed the boundaries of our imagination. But instead, we're going to talk about Tron.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did there, Mike? That's misdirection, that's called. It's one of the 7 joke archetypes, Mike. I looked it up.
This is...
We kid Tron because we love Tron, right, Mike?
Yeah, we got the flow in the end of this movie.
Whose idea was this? Was this mine?
No, it's me.
Was it? Okay, well.
Yeah, right. I apologize to everyone.
Right.
No, I'm kidding. This is this movie definitely has a niche. That's one thing I did discover just from after just looking it up briefly. Just how there's people who actually are looking forward to the third movie that's coming out later this year. And it's not quite the same fan base as a Star Wars, Star Trek, Terminator kind of fan group, but there's some Tron aficionados out there.
There's a Tron subculture out there. I don't think I want to hang out with any of them. We're kidding. We love you guys. So let's just kind of jump in, Mike. And there's a lot to make fun of here, and it's going to hurt a little bit. But there is something. We treat these movies with the reverence they deserve, good or bad, and there's something relevant to pop culture, at least for this movie. So let's kind of go through it in our normal snarky way, Mike.
Yes, sir.
So this was directed by a guy named Steven Leisberger. Didn't really do a whole lot of other stuff other than this franchise. He did, I think he has some animation background. He did the movie Animal Olympics on HBO. Anybody had HBO in the 80s knows what that is.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be a major motion picture, and it never got picked up, and HBO bought the rights and had it exclusive on HBO, and everybody our age grew up watching that thing. He did essentially 80s sex comedy called Hot Pursuit. It featured a very young John Cusack. Robert Loggia, Mike. Orange juice magnate.
Orange juice pitchman extraordinaire.
Yeah, and had both the Stillers in there, Ben and
Jerry.
Ben and Jerry Stiller both in that movie. But I think the most important thing about this movie, Mike, is it featured Miguel Fuentes, who you may not know. He played the Puma Man, his guardian angel of Vedino.
The Onion.
The Onion. Sorry, we're getting a little deep already. Let's pull it back.
Refer back to our last podcast.
Yeah, so this movie was released in July 9th, 1982. Had a budget of $17 million, and it was written by Leisberger himself, his co-writer Bonnie McBird, and a guy named Charles Haas. And those three have just kind of collaborated on all the Tron movies ever since. So this movie has kind of a nefarious history for several reasons. We'll get to that. First of all, is even just the release date. The notoriously petty and litigious Disney were very aggressive about moving the release date up with this because they wanted it to compete with rival animator Don Bluth, who was a head animator at Disney, who left the company to start his own production company. And he was releasing The Secret of Nim that summer. And that didn't sit well with Disney, so they moved production up on this movie to obstruct that movie, to compete with it, to crush it. So that's how the movie even started. Why don't we just go ahead and get through the makings of the movie, Mike? Maybe start with the cast, or should I say the users, Mike? Can you give me the list of the users?
The programs and the users?
Yes, please.
Kind of light on the cast. These are kind of not your grade A, except for Jeff Bridges. You have your kind of B level list here. Your bench warmers, as they would say. Jeff Bridges, of course, who was in this movie doing kind of his at least as his program self. He was kind of doing his Starman audition.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's our hero user that goes into the program guy that is kind of the young hip guy that was kicked out by the bad guy.
He's the bad boy. Yeah,
he owns a fancy arcade, and it's pretty classy joint, like an old 2-story neoclassical bank that had been refitted to be an arcade. And
coolest part of this movie, I thought.
I know he has even his assistants are kind of like his hot girlfriend look like it there. Why would you leave that? Anyway, he's our hero that ends up getting sucked into the computer.
Not to interrupt, Mike. I think it's interesting about Bridges' career. So he's obviously one of the biggest names in Hollywood, very iconic actor, been in several legendary movies. But you got to remember, he's a bit of a bomb magnet. He's been in some of the worst movies historically ever. Like Tucker. Remember that movie Tucker? We played the guy with
the man in his dream. Yeah,
in his dreams, developed the car, took on the big car.
There's something about the compass. That was like his one of his pet projects was this. He wanted to convert this young adult book into a movie series. It kind of flopped.
Golden
I forgot
Compass.
what it was. The Golden Compass. That was probably his biggest stinker that I can think of.
Well, I mean, here's a few more, Mike, if you can't think of the 1979 King Kong remake. Which is R.I.P.D.
Oh yeah, Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, that was a
and don't forget Heaven's Gate. I mean, who's
he was in that? Okay,
he was in that movie. Well, so Big Lebowski notwithstanding, this guy's had his peaks and valleys for sure. All right, who else we got, Mike?
The bad guy. You gotta have an English guy be the bad guy, and that's played with David Warner, who we remember from Planet of the Apes remake. And, he's playing like the only podcast movie I could think of he was in with us. But yeah, he's usually kind of a slimy guy unless he's in The Man of Two Brains, and he's a great comedic actor. He's the head of Incom, which is the big Microsoft-ish, Atari-ish computer organization that employs Bruce Boxleitner, who some may know him more as a TV guy. He's actually Tron in this movie, but he plays Alan.
I didn't know that going in.
Yeah, he plays Alan, who's like a computer tech whose program is called Tron, and
that's a good hero name.
It is. He doesn't become Mike.
Alan the hero.
Yeah, he doesn't become Mike TV like Jeff Bridges, but he does do some computer hacking. I guess that involves him. What's kind of weird is the users create these programs, and the programs look just like them in the actual master control computer, which is interesting.
Yeah.
He was in Babylon 5, Scarecrow was King, and lots of westerns, I believe. But that was Bruce Boxleitner as our seminal, self-titled character Tron. And then you had a couple of other people in there that were, side characters like his girlfriend and also Jeff Bridges' girlfriend. I can never get that quite straight. Played by Cindy Morgan, who us Caddyshack aficionados know her as Lacey Underall, who sadly passed away a few months ago. But yeah, she played I want to say, was it Laura and Vora? I could never get her name.
Laura/Yori.
Yori, that was it. Yeah. Proving that in Tron, only the ladies were like data entry people in the actual master control computer.
Subservient even in the afterlife.
Yeah. But Barnard Hughes, who I knew from the movie Lost. He was a weirdo in Lost, the weird old uncle guy or grandpa. Yeah, he plays a lot of character actors. He was the kind of the guardian, they called him in the computer. He's also kind of the wise old guy that David Warner's trying to push out.
The greatest wardrobe in the history of cinema.
Yeah, that was kind of
I literally had to hit pause during this point and just laugh at it for a while. I didn't want to miss anything.
It looked like a Willy Wonka, goofball kind of character. And then I want to recognize Dan Shore, who played Ram. Dan Shore. Ram was kind of, he was the Star Trek red shirt guy in this movie that was going to die, but
He didn't make it.
he's known for playing Billy the Kid in Bill and Ted's Excellent
Bill and Ted,
Adventure.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
recognize him.
What was, well, I know we'll get into it, but what was weird about a lot of the cast and when they're in the Master Control is like the kind of that 20s and 30s kind of looked like they were in like a silent movie with the makeup and everything with the faces, but that was kind of a weird image kind of creation with that, but it was, there's your cast for 1982's Tron.
Yeah, not too bad. It's just a couple of notes about that cast and the subsequent making of the movie. So they had a hard time casting the female role here that Cindy Morgan, Lacey Underall, ultimately took. Debbie Harry was a candidate for this, but she was kind of scared off by what most of the other actresses were scared off, is the costume. Let's say it was just kind of form-fitting, Mike, and didn't leave a whole lot to the imagination. But
yeah, I'm gonna bring this up now because I may not get a chance to, later. But why was Jeff Bridges' character, the Flynn, when he was actually in Master Control, why was he wearing kind of like the half toga thing?
It's funny you should mention that, Mike. I have notes about that.
Okay,
the suit wasn't tailored to his build, let's say. It was sort of a bulge. What's the saying?
I wondered. That made sense now.
And it being a Disney movie, and
yep,
he had to wear his dancing belt for that, just to keep it a little more modest.
Okay, it kind of like it made him stick out a lot.
Sure. No pun intended.
Pun intended. Yeah,
okay,
there you go.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Also, the computer that was used to make the animation here was not a real horse. It was only 330 megabytes worth of storage in the thing, and only had a 2 megabytes worth of RAM.
He didn't make it.
Yeah, so it's the
that probably took up a whole room back then.
Your iPhone is like 50 times more powerful than that. Disney animators refused to help production on this because they felt that this computer stuff would ultimately replace them. But you know how Disney is; they probably threatened their children at some point and got them back in line. But they didn't like the way the CGI was going. They felt that trend would ultimately replace them, and they were probably 40 years ahead of their time. This was originally intended to be an animated movie, but they felt they had the technology to try to do this new type of filming. This is, for all its faults, guys, this is the first computer-generated imagery we've had in film in American history, or in any history. So it does have that. It features a lot of black. Most of it shot in 65 millimeter, which is this huge type of film, which is about the negatives of that film is like 3.5 times the size of normal film, and it's designed to be more high resolution, be projected on a bigger screen. We shot in black and white, and they utilized a process called rotoscope. That's where animators actually trace over live footage and animate But that would give this movie its unique look.
Is that what gave the skin like that kind of palish like color?
Yeah.
Because it like they were looking out of a charred log or something. Sometimes with the heavy eye makeup.
Yeah, it had a very distinctive visual look for sure. You notice there's no moving camera here. All the shots fixed camera.
Okay.
Sure, that had a lot to do with the complexity of the technology that are using to film the thing. But but just all in all, a kind of interesting visual movie to start with, but usually these things have to pack a punch with a story behind it, and maybe that's where they kind of fell off, but we'll get into that a little bit here. So this is pretty good for the time, like 1982, as we were mentioned. Some other things that were going on in 82. This was a monster year for movies, Mike. We had in this year alone, you had E.T., you had Tootsie, Rocky 3, On Golden Pond, Porky's, Rambo.
He didn't make it.
48 Hours, Blade Runner. I mean, Raiders was in there, Poltergeist, the thing. I mean, this was just an amazing year. Tron ended up coming in 26th in the total box office that year, and on Golden Pond won the best movie Oscar for that year.
Was it a summer release?
Yeah, July 9th.
July.
Yeah. So yeah, just an incredible year for movies, and I left about 50, most of which we already covered on our podcast. Just a very hectic year. On the music scene, Mike, I'm going to give you probably the Murderer's Row of Wuss Rock. I just want you to strap yourself into your chair.
Oh boy!
So these were the songs that were on the radio during this summer. You had Even the Nights Are Better.
Air Supply.
Air Supply, yeah. You had the song Rosanna.
Toto.
By Toto. Hard for me to say I'm sorry.
I call them New Chicago.
The New Chicago, yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing cool, Chicago.
Nope.
Keep the Fire Burning, REO Speedwagon.
Yes, and yeah.
And to wrap it up, Heat of the Moment by the band Asia.
Oh, yeah. Now you found yourself in 82.
Yeah, that's enough to turn your Audi into an innie. All soft rock hits, Mike. All the original songs, all the original artists.
Sessions present.
Some other miscellaneous pop culture news that's probably of interest to no one other than me and Mike. This is the year that G.I. Joe, the toys were relaunched in its 3.5-inch die-cast figures, as opposed to the heavily bearded, almost afroed, kung fu gripped 8-inch models that were before that.
They always get mange.
Yeah. This is the year, famously, the NFL went on strike.
Wow. Scabs.
Scabs came in and took over, and typical NFL owners, they just decided to go roll with it. Did a short nine-game season that year. Speaking of sports, this is the year they had the longest baseball game in Major League Baseball history, 21 hours. Well, technically, but there's an asterisk to that, Mike. This was the Cubs and Dodgers game that went to 17 innings. Oh. And they had to call the game because of darkness, because, of course, Wrigley
no lights
at that time had no lights.
Oh, my gosh.
So multimillionaire ball players had to stop playing baseball and come inside when the sun went down.
Coming in, Johnny.
Yeah,
in the dark.
They picked up the game the next morning at 10 a.m. The Dodgers scored a run and won in 21 after 21 hours. So there you go. Movie tickets would cost you about $3 a piece, Mike. So that was a pretty good bargain. This is the year also that Indiana weatherman NBC affiliate David Letterman took over to do a late night show on NBC, and the rest is history, as they say. This is also the year that Ozzy married his current wife Sharon.
Oh wow!
Their nuptials happened in 1982. I've often wondered, like, what did Sharon see in Ozzy in 1982 that said, you know what, he seems stable enough to be the father of my children. I don't know.
What did she say?
I don't know.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a love story for the ages, Mike. So so speaking of love stories, why don't you and I talk about this movie?
Yes, a three-way.
Yeah, exactly. So unless there's anything to say, Mike, why don't you go ahead and hit the button? So as Mike mentioned, this kind of starts with describing this entity of a company called Encom, and it's run by this bad guy because he's English and he wears a three-piece suit. Therefore, he's the villain.
Yes, Dillinger. He's
Dillinger.
Got even his name is evil.
Yeah. He plays the owner of the company, also the head programmer. He installed this program to run the company called the MCP, Master Control Program.
Hey, it's the big Master Control Program everybody's been talking about.
And as we find out, this is the first instance of like a program getting sentient. There's some AI, and this computer is actually starting to take over the world, but no one's quite sure how it's happening yet. We get introduced to Jeff Bridges, who plays a guy named Flynn, who's been ostracized and kicked out of the company, and Dillinger ended up stealing. He's a game designer and had all his games stolen by Dillinger, and got fired. So
Space Paranoids.
Yes. Yeah, home of the Space Paranoids. So he's running an arcade right now.
Didn't you love the senior citizens that were walking around in like three-piece suits in the arcade? I was like, yeah, that reminds me of an arcade in '82.
Exactly, yeah. So the next step in our character introductions here is we get Bruce Boxleitner, who's kind of like this milquetoast generic hero. He gets called in. He's a programmer. He gets called in to talk to Dillinger because he's been working on some security measures to keep stuff from going in and out of the system. And
he looked like Andy Travis from WKRP.
WKRP, exactly. And Dillinger says, "Hey, knock it off. I don't want you to block the systems. Take a few days off." So Alan starts to suspect that something's not right, and he goes into the arcade and meets up with Jeff Bridges to say, "Hey, something."
I'm sorry, I got to go back to the arcade scene because when you see a scene this early in the movie, it kind of like it shows you what you're in for. For those familiar with Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges' character is playing this video game in the arcade, and everybody's gathered around him, and he has this goofy look on his face because the camera like keeps showing his perspective, and then it shows just a close up of his face. It looks like he just took like this gigantic hit off of some pot. I mean, and he's playing one of the easiest games you've ever seen in the world. It's like he takes 6 or 7 shots of this giant thing that looks like it's from the game Battlezone,
Yeah.
And he misses 5 of them. Then he finally hits it. Oh, that was a world record. I'm like, what was the world record for this?
The thing he hit literally takes up like 95% of the screen.
it was just one of those moments like, okay, this is interesting. But it's like that. It's 42 years old, so I'll give it a pass.
Okay, so Alan's girlfriend is Lacey Underall, and she's a laser scientist, Mike. And she also works at NCOM, and she works with what's his name, the older
Barnard Hughes.
The grandpa.
I forgot it. Dermont or Delmont. I forgot his name.
The grandpa from Lost Boys, for those that helps some people. So she's working on Wonka Vision, Mike. But they're working on this thing where this laser can zap people and put them into cyberspace, which wasn't even a phrase yet, but that's what they were actually talking about. So they confer with Jeff Bridges, and he's always had an extra grind against the company because he's angry that Dillinger stole his games and exiled him. So they decide that they want to go in and figure out what's going on, and Bridges wants to get in and hack into the system, which no one knew what hacking meant then either. So they kind of break in after hours, past some Bridges security, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, one security guard.
Jeff Bridges sits in this conveniently placed tiny little office chair with a little table with a computer on it, which is conveniently lined up with the laser.
Yes.
And Master Control sees that he's in there, and he zaps him, and next thing you know, Jeff Bridges is now tronified, and he's got set into the system. And then for some reason in this computer environment, in this cyberspace, the Master Control likes to have its new recruits fight each other through games, through combat, through
I didn't quite get that. They would take random programs that were used for like different companies and just have them compete against each other for somebody's amusement, I guess. I have no idea.
So the first thing he does, he has to play highlight with the George Costanza looking guy. And what was weird here, Mike, is like he gets to the point where he almost kills this Costanza guy. He's hanging on a ledge, and he shows mercy and doesn't want to kill him. And then Master Control takes away the ledge, and the guy falls to his death. And Jeff Bridges lets out this scream, no, like Darth Vader, no thing. Like he knew this guy his whole life.
No! Kill him!
Yeah, he just got de-res right in front of me.
De-resed, yeah. So that was bizarre. Just like the beginning of the movie, they just kind of jump right into it. There's not a whole lot of exposition or backstory here. They start in cyberspace and they stay there. There's a great set piece here. It's kind of cool. It's kind of iconic now. There's this life cycle scene where the life cycles are these like motorcycles that are fixed to a grid, and they run at super fast speeds, and they have this like trail behind them of a brick wall, and it's designed to like block in and box in opponents and have them crash. That was a cool scene.
Yeah.
Everybody has seen that before. He gets introduced to this guy named Ram.
He didn't make it.
And I know his name is Ram, Mike, because the actor had 10 lines, and 7 of them were, "Hi, my name is Ram."
I'm Ram, yeah.
You like to tell people that his name was Ram. And and you can tell right away his lifespan is as long as Gary Busey's in Point Break or Jeff Daniels.
Even his light cycle was colored red, so that was kind of the biggest clue.
Yeah. So he's in this cycle chase, and the Inquisitors, like the bad robots that are flying around, they end up shooting him and taking out him and Jeff Bridges, and then Ram has a nice little death scene there. He gets blown up. Then Alan kind of comes in through his avatar or his program, which is the guy Tron. Tron is like Spartacus of cyberspace. He likes to throw frisbees at people, kill them, and he's never lost any combat, and he decides that he wants to split up and try to understand how they can beat Master Control. Is the movie over yet?
They got to get to the input-output beam.
Yeah,
and it's like this they can see it in the distance, but all they know is that's where he's got to go to show his little disc, because everything all their identity is on this disc that they carry around and use as a weapon too. Weirdly enough. So
if you'll remember earlier, Alan on the outside world was creating security measures to keep things out and ways to countermeasure Master Control in case it ever got out of sorts like it's doing now. So they go to the IO tower, and there's the watchdog. There's a steward of the IO tower, and it's Bernard Hughes. Or I call Dumont the Hutt. He's in this bizarre.
Yeah, it is Jabba the Hutt.
He's in this bizarre costume where it's just his head but he's like the top of a pyramid. He's got like little arms flailing.
Yeah.
But he allows Alan data to come in from the outside world to go to Tron so they can put this in Master Control's brain. I think that am I close there? Am I close enough?
Yes, he has to present his information to Alan, who's working from the outside, and the program has to transmit his data using with his little disk. And once he realizes what the data is, he has to go then to the Master Control's core or whatever.
Right.
I don't even know what to call it. I'm gonna say I think they call it core.
They call it the core. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so the visual representation of Master Control was essentially the Kool-Aid Man. He's just like the cylindrical red Kool-Aid Man.
The spinning Kool-Aid Man.
Very menacing. So the balance of the second act and most of the third is just kind of like a 90s screensaver. There's just a lot of visual imagery, eye candy here. The three heroes get in a ship and speed towards Master Control. There's a confrontation with Tron has with MCP. Flynn takes the data. He jumps into MCP's brain, the brain beam, and then it kind of goes in there. But not before he gets a little sugar from Lacey Underall stealing.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And then the evil red guy's head explodes, and he turns from red to blue. So he's good now, and he can go home now because the movie's over. There's a little in the ending scene where we see back in the real world Jeff Bridges getting off a plane.
That's what a tacked on scene that was. Thing, right? Oh my goodness.
He gets off this helicopter and heads into the company like as if he's the new owner, and that's it, guys. And they show this like kind of random time lapse of the valley, Silicon Valley, and then
go to black like data. Yeah, that was slightly clever.
There's your movie, guys.
Then I like the in the climax, and you like the giant David Warner just kind of oafing around as this giant form. He's like a guardian from Prince of Space. He just kind of couldn't quite like hit anybody because he moved really slow.
Yeah,
and he thought something big was going to happen because Master Control's like, I'm giving you all my power, Sark. Yeah. And then he just kind of goofs around and doesn't do anything. It's like, oh, okay, that was anticlimactic.
His evil superpowers were wander around aimlessly and gain weight. All right, so big surprise. We weren't that impressed by it, but it's 40 years old, and it is what it is. In the context of the moment, it probably has some merit. So let's kind of talk about awards and accolades, see if we can come around on it, Mike. So this had a dismal $5 million opening. It was not a big hit, not very well received. It ended up doing $33 million domestically. They tried re-releasing it the following February, and it did even worse. But it did have a bit of a second release to try to recoup some of the costs. Did not work. So if you couple this with this performance along with Disney's other live action movie, The Black Hole, from a few years earlier.
Oh yeah,
that was enough to get Disney out of the live action business for about 10 years. They decided, you know what, let's just stick to cartoons. It's much easier for us.
Yeah.
So, did not have a worldwide release. That probably didn't help. It did get nominated for 2 Oscars, and here's some real irony is, Mike.
Visual effects.
It was disqualified from because they used computers, and the Academy felt that was cheating. So they weren't eligible that year.
The irony.
The irony, right?
Crazy.
I was also nominated for Best Costumes, which it lost to Gandhi, and Best Sound, which it lost to E.T. So the legacy of this movie is notwithstanding. It was the first CGI movie ever made. That's cataloged by even the Guinness Book of World Records, so that's kind of cool. It did set a precedent. You said it did establish a subculture. Created the Tron guy, internet celebrity Tron guy. Have you ever seen that guy, Mike?
No, I just know Max Headroom. Yeah. Is the Tron guy like the spinning Kool-Aid guy?
He's kind of a dumpy-looking older white guy that doesn't have the physique for the Tron suit, but spent a lot of time on YouTube showing his homemade Tron costume cosplay.
I really.
You have to see it.
I'm glad I missed it.
To see that to understand what that is. But,
no, I don't.
But we got the Tron guy. Oddly enough, the arcade game Tron featured in every Showbiz Pizza, Chuck E. Cheese, all my field trips to school. That game made significantly more money than the movie did. It was a great stand-up coin-operated game, and those are still selling north of $40,000 a piece if you could find them. They're just an amazing game.
What about Space Paranoids? Did it ever come out that game?
Sadly, no.
was a big console in that one.
Sure
Man.
was.
You could have four or five people play that at a
Yeah.
time.
It did create a couple sequels. One was
Mm.
Tron Legacy in 2010. I think Bridges and Boxleitner came back for that. Not the biggest hit they were hoping for, but a lot of fan service at least. There's a new one coming out. I don't know the release date, but it's called Tron Ares, and it stars show favorite Gillian Anderson, Mike, and
Yeah.
unfortunately Jared Leto. So
Yeah, I think I heard that too. I heard none of the original cast either
yeah,
from the first two movies. I was like,
win some, lose some there.
yeah,
It did,
yeah. You talk about a.
yeah,
Sorry to divert you, but yeah, Jared Leto is behind some
yeah,
little stinkers, little
yeah,
stinkeroos. You talk
yeah.
about Jeff Bridges, this Jared Leto's.
He may take the mantle for Jeff there.
Yeah.
It is spawned an animated series, the some critical acclaim called Tron Uprising in 2012. I think it was a 10 episode run, uh, kind of a manga type version of it. It was really well received. I think Frodo Baggins did the voice of the main character in that one.
Nice.
So we've been beating up on this thing for a lot of time here, but we want to at least recognize the achievements this movie made.
Yeah.
It's been beat up over the course of history, but of course it's not going to age well. What does age well? We don't age well, that's for sure. So
yeah, this of all the movies we've done, this is the hardest to look at in a nostalgic kind of eye. Yeah. It's hard to put yourself back in 1982 in the summer then and imagine watching this movie because I mean it had some cutting edge stuff in it, and when you see the credits roll and you see you try to block out the Journey song, but you see Atari and there was even Apple, a fledgling Apple was behind making this, and all these different camera companies. And you see that this, there was a lot of there's a big team that went into this, and there was some a lot of effort into it, and you have to appreciate that looking back at it now in some way or another, instead of just going, look at that looks dopey. I mean,
that's the problem. Anything like retro tech is hard. It's kind of its own little unique little circumstance.
It ages poorly, or ages quickly, I should say.
Yeah. So again, me and Mike weren't big fans, but we do appreciate it on some level for all the reasons we just stated. And it's interesting to note that let's face it, The Matrix, 17 years later, exists because of this. Let's be honest, it's relatively the same concept. So let's not kid ourselves.
And I don't know about you, but this in 1982, this was the first summer that people started getting a lot of PCs.
Yeah.
People had the Commodores and your first Apples were coming out. And I had the Radio Shack version of TRS-80 at that time. But, everybody, this is when you're first getting into computers. And it kind of baffled me, like when you say how poorly received it was in the theaters.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't get a bigger reception when it did come out.
Well, there's a few reasons for that. And let's kind of get to our grumpy meter. I think maybe our stories will be, kind of indicative of what that was. So why don't you go first, Mike? Let's talk about the first time you saw it, and then your most recent watch, and what kind of changed for those. So.
It was funny. I was reminded of this is going to be kind of obscure for some people unless you went to Disney World, but if you went to Disney World in say the mid 80s, late early 90s, you saw there was this thing that was shown at Epcot called Captain EO, which was a Michael Jackson kind of launch
Joe Pesci too,
right? Thing, and it was like a short movie, but it was all spectacle. Like you were watching it for the animation, for the special effects, but you look back now at the story, and you're like, "Wow, that was stupid," and it's true. I mean, but you don't. That's why it was at Disney Epcot. It was cutting edge. You wanted to see this because it was
You just described every sci-fi movie since 2010.
Probably so, but I mean that's the way I felt about watching Tron last night. It was like it was a good idea, and like I said, it was basically the frame of it was just to show, wow, computer graphics. Ooh, look at that triangles. Ooh, look at that Tetris looking shape coming at me. And, whoa, is that Battlezone? It's like it had all these cool concepts. Like you said, I think it was more like a almost an experimental movie in a way. And then somebody came along, I'm not going to say, was it Listenberg? Who was the guy? Listenberg. It's a good story, but I think it gets really gummed up with some of the juvenile kind of dialogue that I'm sure some of the other writers inputted.
Yeah.
It was very juvenile. and as corny as serious as the actual undertones of the movie was, you expected more kind of a, I don't know, I'm not gonna say adult themed, but just something a little bit more educated with all the science going on in creating this movie.
Yeah.
It even had what was weird about was the religious undertones in it, and most of that would go over kids' heads with the the Guardians and being used to like entrap certain programs, and then using their energy around the red Kool-Aid guy at the end. It was like really. And even the way Tron reacts with his user, and it's almost like he views him as God through the IO tower. It's like that kind of stuff. It's just odd to see, and it becomes a victim of one of those movies that doesn't know its audience. Like, it's not a kids movie, and it's not an adult movie. It just has cool graphics. Let's look at it.
Yeah, that's where I was going. That's the paradox. Is the only studio with the muscle to make a movie like this was probably Disney.
Yeah.
And the themes and what they're trying to say here are not palatable for the typical Disney audience. So that's probably what did it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that hurt Black Hole too. Was it was a very dark theme to the movie. Yeah. But then they had like these characters like the little robot, and even Tron has the little like character. I guess they were trying to market the Bit character. What an annoying thing that was. But they just
gave up on that too, didn't they?
It did. He just Bit just disappeared halfway through the movie, just exited through. He got derailed or something.
Even the movie thought it sucked.
Yeah, and I think those movies are very similar of not finding the right audience.
Yeah, that's a good take on it, Mike. So when I watched, I never have seen this thing start to finish. I didn't see it in theaters. It didn't really interest me as a kid. And I don't want to say it was too nerdy for me, but it was probably too nerdy for me. I was probably playing Dungeons and Dragons instead, right, that weekend. But the point is that that computer culture, that tech stuff, at that time was really limited. It wasn't chic. It wasn't, there wasn't some sort of coolness or subculture to it. It was really limited and pigeonholed to these. It was almost demonized as nerd people. If you were into computers back then, you weren't cool. There was no geek chic back then. And I think that may have something to do with me, like not being that interested in it. Having, cable over the course of the years, I'd always flip over and see parts of it, but it never really, it seemed like it was kind of like a Star Warsy type ripoff thing. And just didn't really...
It was Star Wars meets The Running Man.
Yeah.
If you want to mash those two together, you get Tron.
I just felt it was probably too niche for a 13-year-old kid at the time. So forcing myself to watch this 40 years later as an adult that does a stupid podcast, I'm like, I had missed the boat on the context of it by now, and I've 40 years entrenched of thinking about these types of movies. I could still appreciate it for what it was, but it's hard to put yourself in that frame of reference. Watch this through 1982 eyes, Justin, and not think about everything that's come since. And that's
you can't do it. That's the thing.
And that's when the story has to come in and support it, and the story couldn't do that either. So it was it was like, okay.
Yeah,
I'm glad I saw it for the cultural context of it. So I have a benchmark to make fun of other movies, but the CGI stuff,
not quite.
Again, 40 years of stuff,
Yeah, and you can't really say like with Jaws or Texas Chainsaw Massacre that it was like a pioneer in a certain field and everybody copied it, because I can't really think of any like obviously because of the poor box office, but nobody really copied this idea and ran with it.
Maybe the Lawnmower Man delved into it a little bit, but that's not a good thing.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what's done is done. We've got it out of the way, Mike. So, you take a deep breath. So, I guess the takeaway from this movie was the CGI, of course, and that got us thinking here at Grumpy Nostalgia about the impact of CGI on modern storytelling. It's debatable. People say that it's killed the movie genre, taking creativity away. People say it's enhanced it. But one thing that everybody can be sure of, that there's some really bad CGI out there that we could really make a meal of and really have a lot of fun with. So for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal, me and Mike are going to showcase some of our favorite elements of CGI and how we think they're pretty terrible. So, Mike, why don't you head off? Maybe pick or two or three here, if you got an honorable mention or not. But let's take turns going back and forth and showcase some of this. Where Tron led us to this current CGI.
Tron, yes.
What it's done, what kind of environment it's created. So you're up first.
Some of mine go around Tron and predate Tron, but this one, I had to mention this one just because it's a nice segue. 1992's Lawnmower Man. Justin, thank you for bringing that one up.
See, okay.
It's Jeff Fahey and Pierce Brosnan. I remember being really excited about watching this movie, and I had no idea about it until I watched it. And that was a big regret of mine. I should have left the theater. But
the only thing at all that I've ever seen Pierce Brosnan in where I wanted to kill him. He was on with his pierced ear and his like silk shirts.
Yes.
Awful. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the Thomas Crown Affair, he was so smug in that movie.
Okay, well, yeah. That's
just me. But yeah, it was a short story in Night Shift by Stephen King, and it's a really, it's a perfect kind of tight story for a nice short story about a guy who hires some guy, he's told not to look at him, and he makes a mistake of looking at him, and what he sees is repugnant and terrible, and it basically ends like that.
Yeah.
Lawnmower Man, the movie, decides to expand that into some kind of weird computer, taking some guy with mental disabilities.
It was like Flowers for Algernon.
Yeah, and plug him into a computer. But one of the worst scenes in the movie is, the Jeff Fahey character is rendered as some kind of mainframe in the computer, and he takes it over from inside, and it's horribly done. It's so bad. I almost want to say watch it just for, you can probably find a clip online of just that. Don't watch the whole movie. Just see that and just go, wow.
Okay.
That was 10 years after Tron. That's all they could do.
I think this merits an Instagram post for all. I'll put still shots for all these for our fans.
Appreciate that. Yes. But that was Lawnmower Man from 92. Do not watch.
That's a good one, Mike. Very good. All right. So I kind of limited my categories to a very unique niche. So you can make the argument that most, if not all, CGI is bad. There's very few exceptions, but what particularly rattles my cage is when production companies use CGI to replicate things that already exist. And so my list is just about those things, unnecessary CGI that's done so poorly that it does the opposite and makes the movie look, 50 times less technical. So the first one there, of course, has got to be Justice League 2017, when they use CGI to digitally replace Henry Cavill's mustache. He was shooting a movie at the same time, concurrent movie. I think it was Mission Impossible, where he had this wonderful mustache. So rather than shave it, they decided to give the most iconic superhero in American history a cleft palate by digitally erasing this mustache. All they had to do was, shave the mustache and, put a prosthetic on for the other movie, or, give them 2 weeks to grow it out.
Yeah.
But no, they decided to, the hubris of these guys saying, we can erase that. So if you ever see his upper lip in that movie, you'll get physically...
You'll never unsee it.
Yeah, you'll never unsee it, and you'll be, physically angry and sick. So, again, you don't need CGI to have facial hair on or off, guys. We already have the means for that. Thank you very much. So that's my first pick, Mike.
And supposedly it's spent what, like $1.9, $2 million? It's
embarrassing, just
to do that editing. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay. I'm gonna throw out a movie that predates Tron by just a year or two, and it's gonna step on some people's toes, but that's okay. Because looking back on it now, for me, this is a personal thing. The movie Flash Gordon.
Okay, yeah.
The effects in that movie are terrible. I know. It's part of the campiness of it, and it's kind of supposed to look kind of hokey and in a way and cheap, but some of the scenes, like when the Hawkmen are flying, you you can almost see the wires. It's just
you can't see the wires. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Who cares?
I'm trying to give them exactly. I mean, that's what I'm supposed to just do, the suspension of disbelief kind of thing, but it's tough. It's one of those movies. I love the movie. I love the Queen soundtrack. I love everything about it.
I could watch it every day.
Yeah, and but that's the one little thing I have to just kind of take off and check out of my brain. Just okay, it is what it is. They just keep down the effects, and it is that's what it is. It's more of just spending their money in other places and just budgeting differently. So I'll give them that. But yeah, that would be it's still a tough watch sometimes for that.
The best part of that story for me, never noticed it before as a kid. Never cared about it. Never even crossed my mind that it looked cheesy. Didn't matter.
Yeah, I know.
That's the irony. So that's a great pick. I don't know. We haven't covered that movie yet, Mike, but we'll get to it here
Eventually.
So my second pick is it's a neat little crime thriller called Along Came a Spider. This is based for the James Patterson novels. The Alex Cross, Morgan Freeman play the character here. The opening scene of this movie is a kind of sting operation where a federal agent is in a convertible speeding down a bridge on a dark night, and she's got the perp who's driving the car, and she pulls the gun on him, and he flips out, and he gets shot in the leg by her, and that kind of culminates in this horrific car crash animation scene where he goes flying over the bridge, and then this cartoon of a car, like Wile E. Coyote Acme car thing. It was the worst car crash I've ever seen on film, but actually wasn't on film. And especially, we just talked about The Fugitive, Mike, when they actually they crashed a train into a bus train. And you can recreate a car crash, guys. Hollywood has been doing it for 80 years. They I guess they wanted to go safe or maybe cheap. I'm guessing probably the latter. And so what is essentially a very taut crime thriller is essentially ruined because the first thing you see is this cartoonishly bad animation of this car crash that was completely unnecessary. And that's the only thing I think about when I think about that movie now. Not the actors or the performances or the great plot of the twist. I think about that stupid car crash, and that's solely on the producers for using cheap CGI. So that's my second pick, Along Came a Spider from 2001.
Wow, that's a deep cut. I want to pick.
There you go. Yeah, see what I did.
I did. Honorable mentions. I'm going to throw in Puma Man. We mentioned him. We mentioned Puma Man earlier, and I just as soon as I thought about the flying sequences with our hero in his corduroy slacks.
That's straight up rear projection all the way.
Yes, and that is rear. That's rear end projecting. It's terrible. That was my honorable mention, along with every sci-fi movie, and that would be SYFY movie.
Oh yeah, sci-fi movies. Yeah.
From about 2014 to 2021, anytime something's on fire or something is like, you can obviously tell the fire. Yeah, it's always like fake. It's always kind of projected onto the object that's supposed to be on fire. And my gosh, I know they were made on the cheap, but
you don't want to burn up Tiffany or Debbie Gibson, do you?
No. Are the rubber snake? Yeah, you don't want to do that. Come on, you can't hurt a monkey, right? But yeah, so those are my honorable mentions.
Good. All right.
But I want to. My third choice is actually CGI, poorly CGI rendered in a comical good way, and that would be the. This is a very specific scene from the movie Airplane. But is when the little underling from the airline company has to go pick up Captain Rex Kramer, and after he convinces them to go help Ted Stryker in the plane and everything. They're riding back to the airport, and as they're driving, it's obvious green screen, but they make full use of it. They show like mafia vehicles from the 40s and 50s trying to shoot at them. They show cowboys and Indians coming up next to them behind the rear window, and everything's projected and looks so hilariously fake, but it's just so ridiculous. And the way he's driving is like zigzag. The camera's like just going crazy. And you're like,
okay.
It's CGI done stupidly and cheaply, and it's wonderful. So there you go. Airplane.
That talk about deep cuts. That's an even better one, Mike. Thank you.
Sure.
So I've got a couple of honorable mentions too. Of course, we would do ourselves a disservice. We didn't mention the movie Birdemic.
Yeah.
With the thousands of birds that are stationary in the air, just flapping. But I think the Hall of Fame for bad CGI is the Scorpion King, of course, Dwayne Johnson. Notoriously, I mean, it is the benchmark, the gold
standard. The Mummy Returns,
for bad CGI. just before they knew what they were doing. It looked rushed, of course, and that's what it was, and on the cheap. But that's got to go in there. We can't have that conversation without talking about that one. But my last pick is going to be I Am Legend, 2007. Oh. So great movie, enjoyed it. That was before Will Smith got all weird. Great job. One of my favorite genres, one of my favorite stories in that genre.
Yes.
We talked about the Vincent Price, and we talked about Charlton Heston playing this role in this movie as well. So I've grown up with this story. Great film, greatly shot, great script. However, the vampires in the movie, when they come on screen, they just look cartoonish. They look artificial. They look fake.
Yeah.
I understand what they were trying to do here. But this is a perfect example. Practical effects would have worked so much better. Tell me that would be 5 times more scary if they had the practical effects of American Werewolf in London instead. Just they're amazing makeup artists.
Or just The Walking Dead. You think about some of the effects they use in the zombies for that show.
But it just looked so artificial, and it really took some of the menacing aspect of the movie out of the way, because why would you be afraid of a cartoon? That's all that was. It was really just a 2-dimensional overlay on the screen. It did not work. It just kind of took me out. But
just give him white hair and a robe.
That worked. That worked for Chuck Heston, man.
Yeah, that's pretty damn scary to me.
That still scares the crap out of me to this day, man. Those things are. Those hippie vampires are deadly, man. All right, so that's going to kind of wrap it up. So, Mike, that was a lot of fun. Thank you. It was a great list. So, if you like what you just heard, or if you're new to the show, you can check us out on Instagram. We're at Grumpy Nostalgia. You can check out all of our show information on that. You can send us an email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. We'd really like to get a mailing list started to our regular listeners. So if you're interested in that, send us your email. We'd be happy to get you on our mailing list, where we can send you out a newsletter with all of our new show updates and potential polls, and just want to get some of your feedback. We really like that. And we'll also send you some free merch while supplies last. I just want to point out for the show that we are currently ranked. I got a little notification today from the podcasting conglomerate Good Pods. I don't know what that is, Mike.
Conglomerate.
But they're a ranking service.
Incom.
Yeah. But we're currently charting out at number 37 on the film review podcast list. So we
moving up the charts.
Yeah. That could very well be out of 40. I don't know. But they felt relevant enough to send me an email, and it wasn't a pitch for anything for money. It was just general, hey, you're doing well, keep tracking very well. So,
okay, wow.
So whatever, thank you for the good folks at Good Pods for keeping track of our dumb show. So we do have a YouTube channel, which I'm considering renaming to Medusa, because men dare not look at it. But you can still check out some of our shows on YouTube. So Mike, that's going to kind of wrap it up for this week. Anything else you want to say before we head out of here today?
Computers are just machines. They can't think. End of line.
I'll do the thinking around here, BitBrain. All right, so for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time. Beep, beep, boop.
That will be all.